Good evening, and welcome to Will2Heal, a podcast where we explore trauma, healing, and the power of reclaiming your story. I'm your host, Jamie Wright Deese, and today we begin our very first series by diving into a topic that affects far more people than most realize: generational trauma. First question: what is generational trauma? Generational trauma, also known as intergenerational trauma, refers to emotional and psychological wounds that are passed down from one generation to the next. This just isn't about personal experience. It's about what we inherit from our families, cultures, and communities, whether that is through behavior, silence, or even in our DNA. It's the fear, anxiety, and hypervigilance we can't explain. It's feeling unsafe in safe places. It's reacting to situations in ways that don't make sense in the moment until we trace the roots. Let me share something personal. I didn't know what I was carrying until I became a parent. That's when I realized I was repeating patterns I swore I never would. I was reacting with fear, not love, and that was my wake-up call. There are several types of generational trauma. Here are the 5 common ones. Each one affects families and communities in different ways. The first is personal trauma. This includes things like domestic violence, sexual abuse, or addiction. If your parents or grandparents endured these, their coping mechanisms, such as emotional detachment, control, anger outbursts, or avoidance, often become learned behaviors. These unhealed wounds directly impact your parenting style, sometimes leading to overprotection, authoritarian discipline, or emotionally unavailable caregiving. The second, adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. These are potentially traumatic events from our childhood, like neglect, parental separation, or witnessing violence. Research shows that the more ACEs a person has, the greater their risk for depression, addiction, chronic illness, and continued trauma in future relationships. It's a dose-response relationship, meaning the higher the number, the higher the risk. The third is collective trauma, and that's when entire groups or communities go through tragedy like war, natural disasters, systemic violence, or forced relocation. That grief and fear can echo through generations. For example, survivors of the Holocaust, descendants of enslaved populations, or communities impacted by 9/11 or Hurricane Katrina can still carry deep, lingering emotional imprints. Number 4, racism. This is a form of trauma deeply embedded in systems and societal structures. The fear, discrimination, and lack of safety experienced by one generation can affect the self-worth, identity, and opportunity in the next. Children may grow up believing they have to overperform to be accepted, or that certain spaces aren't meant for them. It can shape how they see themselves, limit what they believe is possible, and disrupt their sense of belonging. The 5th is epigenetics. This one is powerful. Research shows that trauma can alter gene expression. That means a traumatic event experienced by one generation can biologically impact how stress or fear responses are triggered in the next. Children may be more prone to anxiety, depression, or hypervigilance, even when they are raised in seemingly safe environments. Now, how does trauma get passed down, you asked? There are several ways that trauma travels through generations. Let's break this down. The first is genetic transmission. Studies in epigenetics shows that trauma can change how our genes are expressed. These changes occur in the chemical tags on DNA that influence whether certain genes are turned on or off. It doesn't change the DNA itself, but it changes how your body responds to stress, fear, or emotion, and those responses can be inherited. Scientists have observed this in populations affected by famine, war, or slavery. The second is cultural transmission. This includes the stories we tell, the roles we assign, that emotions are allowed, and what taboos are passed down. In many families, boys are taught not to cry, or girls are expected to be caretakers. Religious beliefs can also play a role, enforcing silence, shame, or martyrdom. The culture of a home shapes how children internalize safety, value, and their identity. Number 3, direct exposure and learned behavior. Children mimic what they see. If love looks like control or safety looks like silence, they grow up believing that's normal. For example, if a child watches one parent dominate another in a name of love, or sees emotional pain met with silence or punishment, they internalize those dynamics. Trauma doesn't just live in what was done, it lives in how we survived it. We'll explore this further in upcoming episodes. As a side note, research even shows trauma can pass down as far as 4 generations from the original experience. And many of us are still carrying burdens that we didn't choose. Now, there are several barriers to breaking this cycle. The first is going to be denial or normalization. And that means the old saying, "That's just how it was back then," is an example. The second, shame and silence. Families often avoid difficult topics, leaving the younger generations in the dark on how to change things. Number 3, lack of resources. Many families never had access to therapy, education, or emotional support. Number 4, loyalty and fear. We fear that acknowledging harm is betraying the people we love. But healing isn't betrayal. It's a brave act of love. Now, healing starts with an awareness. You can begin healing by reflecting on your family timeline. Or you can ask yourself, what did love look like in my home? What emotions weren't safe for me to express? You can also journal your emotional patterns. Or you can seek therapy or trauma-informed support. And most importantly, practicing compassion with yourself. You didn't create the trauma, but you have the power to interrupt the cycle. As a final message, you are not broken. You are carrying things that you were never meant to carry. But now you have the awareness to begin letting them go. Take some time this week to reflect on the question, what patterns or wounds might I be carrying from generations before me? If today's episode resonated with you, I invite you to share it with someone who might need it. And don't miss episode 2, The Wounds We Carry, How Trauma Gets Passed Down. Thank you for being here. This is Will2Heal, and I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful evening.